back to BISambition. I'm your host, Amukta.
And I'm Mac. And today's episode will be about revision techniques and tips.
As you can tell, we are recording this episode virtually, but we're going to try our best to provide you the best advice. So today we're being joined by our Year 12 friends and peers, Juliet and Aisha. Could you guys please introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Juliet. My subjects are higher level bio, higher level chem, and higher level psychology. And my standard levels are Maths AI, French, and English. And I hope to study occupational therapy in Canada.
My name is Aisha, and my IB subjects are higher level math, bio, physics, and geography, and standard level English and Spanish. And I hope to study biophysics in college.
All right, so let's just get stuck into it. What are some revision strategies that you use, and what was the most effective?
I think it's useful to use a mix of online and in-person or paper revision tools. In terms of online, the school does a really good job providing a lot of useful websites and video links. So those have been really good. And then in terms of paper, I like to make a lot of revision mind maps and put them around my room. So that's good.
Yeah, and I think the school's website that they use, ProQuest, is really great because it links us to a whole bunch of different websites that we're able to use. What about you, Aisha?
I think for each subject it's quite different, but I think generally the technique that I use for each subject is to split your time between studying the content and actually doing the practice questions. So I'd say I'd start off by going through the material, either by going through the textbooks, like for science. I use the revision guides all the time, and for history, probably the textbook. So I think first I'd go through the material, look through everything, take notes on it, understand what I need to understand, and then after that move on to exam questions. And I think that's the most effective technique.
A revision technique that teachers always tell us to try is making flashcards. Have you guys tried that, and do you think they're really helpful?
Flashcards can be really useful for some people, in terms of having a question immediately. Testing yourself can be really good for active recall. Personally, I have never really managed to get the hang of them, but they can be good in specific subjects. But I think in terms of more essay-based, it could be good to use those in a combination of other tools.
All right, so now we're going to move on to speaking about how we can balance revision and our extracurriculars, because I think what's kind of the big problem with IB is time management and being able to have a social life and do all of the fun stuff that you usually like to do, and then also keep up a good revision timetable. So how do you guys balance revision in your extracurriculars?
I think the most important thing for balancing them is probably understanding your time management. I'd say when you have something to study for, say a test or something, it's best to go from the end, if that makes sense. You have the date of your test and then you go backwards from there. You're how much time do I need for practice questions? How much time do I need to look over the material? And from there you can plan what to do with your time. I think something that's really important to me is, like you said, balancing school as well as doing all the things that you want to do outside, whether it be extracurriculars or just having time to do whatever you want. And what I found useful is to kind of split what part of your day that you want to put towards studying. So say you have one topic of math to cover and you think that will take maybe an hour, so you can put that hour in the morning, and then you'll have the night to do whatever you want, or so on. But it's all about time management, I think.
I agree.
And I think we're always told to make study timetables and stuff like that. And for me personally, study timetables never really stuck because I just couldn't be that organized all the time. But I do think that study timetables can be helpful with some people when they know that they just cannot keep themselves accountable for the amount of time that they study.
I think it gets really complicated because people who might struggle with procrastination can really benefit off having a structured day and feeling like they're being productive with ticking things off. However, it can have the negative approach of feeling kind of daunting like if you don't get that checklist done that day, then you're behind on your own schedule. So it kind of depends on the person.
Yeah.
Yep.
So do you guys revise differently for certain subjects? Do you have like a different way that you'd revise for the sciences in contrast to like, you know, the humanities or English?
I think depending on the subject, you definitely have different revision strategies. I think for math and physics, I'm a lot more like go straight into the questions. Because it's really like all about application, and you can like understand what's written in the textbook, but if you can't apply it, then you won't do too well in the tests. So I tend to go more questions for math and physics, whereas something like history is like really content heavy, and geography like case studies and stuff, which I would probably tend to make like mind maps or like write more notes for them. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree, especially for the maths and sciences. I feel like starting with the revision questions helps me because, you know, most of the time I don't know what I like actually understand and what I don't understand. And I feel like going straight into the revision questions is a good way to ensure that you've got your understanding. What about you, Juliet?
Hoping I won't get asked. Okay. No, it's good. Revision questions are a great resource for obviously like all subjects, no matter like how you might differ with revising them. But I do think in terms of humanities and stuff, like Aisha mentioned, where it's more application based, I think you could benefit more like focusing on like a conceptual knowledge before you start on questions. Because if you're planning out how to structure like an essay and you're trying to dive into that first, then that might be like a bit of a shock, you know, if you don't know what you're writing about.
Yeah.
So that's different.
And I think you both take like different subjects, like a variety of subjects. Do you guys have any like recommendations of websites for each of those subjects? Like for example, Aisha, you said you take physics, maths, and Juliet, you take
bio and psychology.
Yeah. So like, do you guys have recommendations?
Aisha?
I'd say specifically for math and physics, I don't study them the same way as I do like bio. So for math and physics, sometimes like with physics, I don't even know where to start studying. So I tend to start doing the questions first, and then if there's a concept I don't understand, I tend to like watch a YouTube video for it. Whereas for bio, I'm like more comfortable reading it. But for bio, I'd say Bio Ninja is really good. Yeah, Bio Ninja is good. Cognity as well can be good at times, and the textbook. And for physics, I think I rely more on YouTube videos than any like reading. No, not written. Any like text.
I'd say in terms of like I take a humanity higher, psychology. It's hard to find non-written things because everything about it is written. It's like a written subject. So if you don't like reading, then like whoops, you know, you kind of have to. But I would say useful websites that really do a good way of summarizing it is In Thinking. That's really great for psychology. Cognity can also be really good for psych. And if you need to like go over a case study, then there are videos on YouTube that are good if you just search in the name.
Yeah. So when do you guys recommend is the best time to start studying? So obviously if you were given like a test date for, let's say, 2 weeks in advance, would you start now? Would you wish that you started a month before? When do you guys start studying for certain exams or test dates?
Well, it depends on like the severity of the assessment, you know, like if it's just a end of unit quiz or end of topic quiz, then I'd start maybe a week and a half. When it's announced, then I'd start getting it together. But if it's something you would know about going into the year, like a mid-year, end of year exam, I would say about 2-3 months in advance, maybe, like starting to get into it.
I think obviously like 3 months before an exam, you don't have to be like full-fledged 8 hours every
No,
day,
no.
I'm going to study all of this. But it is really important that you've got your deadlines in mind, like the big exams and like the mid-years and all of that. It's really important that you keep those in mind as you study and just slowly start inching your way towards it so that all of the stress doesn't just build up until the very last moment. What about you, Asha?
I think like Juliet said, it depends on like what kind of test it is and like how important the test is. I think generally about 1 or 2 months is always a safe bet. But I think we like a lot of us just end up procrastinating until the last minute. But I think you can like do a lot with 2 weeks. Most people don't realize that you can actually do quite a lot with like 2 weeks or 1 week. If you put like a couple of days of that into studying the content and then use like whatever time is left to go into your practice questions, I think like you can do a lot more in like a week or two than you think you could.
Yeah, and I think if you were planning to study, like 2 months in advance and that didn't go well for you, maybe you procrastinated or something like that, then even if you do only have 2 weeks, you can still make good use of your time. So just kind of stay streamlined and almost don't let the stress get to you, because even though you know that your exam's coming up soon, you can still make up for lost hours to some extent. So especially with procrastination, I think that's really important. How do you guys deal with that?
Great question. I think a big thing with procrastination is like they talked about a bit like we learned in TOK about the instant gratification monkey, like a whole analogy thing, where procrastination is really good at making you feel good in the moment, because obviously revision is a bit of a daunting thing at times. So a big thing is to break it down into manageable sections. Like you can't just say, today I'm going to revise biology, because like what part, even the unit could be too big for a day. So just make it realistic and small.
So
I think like, sorry, go on.
No, it's fine. You can go.
I think like having a specific like checklist for what you want to do in that day is really useful. Because one, like if you tell yourself I'm gonna sit down and revise, like it doesn't mean anything and you're gonna sit down and not really like know what to do with yourself. But if you have like a post-it note on your desk with a bullet point, like make notes on topic 1, 2, 3, and do like 2019 past paper or something, it's like it's easy to see what you have to do, and it's also like really satisfying to be able to like cross those out on your post-it. And I think that helps with procrastination, like when you have a set date and like a checklist for each day. And another thing I find like quite helpful is if you have something that you like really don't want to do and you set a specific amount of time to it, like say you plan to leave the house at 5 p.m. or something, if you sit down at 4 p.m. and say I'm going to write my notes on this topic, then you're kind of forced to finish it by 5 p.m. if that makes sense. Like it's all about setting a time for it and setting a list of things that you want to complete by then.
Okay, I think it's really interesting, Juliet, that you mentioned the instant gratification monkey. Could you explain what that is to the people listening?
That would be really great. Okay, the instant gratification monkey was a theory proposed in a TED Talk about memory, I think that we covered in TOK and other lessons, where it's kind of like a personification of like, how do I say it? Like instant gratification.
Yeah.
It's the monkey. Yeah. And it's like the kind of part of your brain that wants to feel happy now and doesn't really have regard for happiness, like short term. I mean, for long term doesn't like take that into account. So you got to be careful to put the monkey in a box and put it away.
Got it. So, have you guys ever done that one test that like tells you if you're like an auditory or kinesthetic or visual learner? Have you guys done that before?
I can't say I have.
Off prior lesson experience, I would say I'm a visual ? I think. Yeah.
What is kinesthetic? What is that? Kinesthetic
is like you learn from like doing things. So like live demonstrations, doing practicals in school and stuff like that. I personally discovered I was an auditory learner, and I actually think doing that is really good. like doing that test just for reference, even if you're not sure that you'll use it. Because after finding out that I was an auditory learner, I found that it was easier for me to like read my notes out loud or like pretend I was teaching it to someone or actually teach it to someone. You know, I didn't have that many imaginary friends. But I just think
That's cool.
no, once you recognize what kind of learner you are, you can sort of do things that attribute to that. And on that note, like trying to teach the topic, especially if you're an auditory learner, hearing yourself say the words and hearing yourself teach it is a really good revision technique that I used in the last 2 years and I use now.
I wanted to add just a little bit to that. Sorry, you mentioned briefly about teaching it to other people, and I love doing that. Even if like a lot of people don't take the subjects I do, I find it great to literally put down your phone, record yourself teaching, and then either listen to it again or just like delete it or send it to someone, you know. But it's really great if you're forced to teach it, because then you can like summarize it, you know.
And I think
so
is going on to like group studying now. I think what's really good about group studying is that you can hear it be said and you can help other people and all of that. And also what's really fun about group studying is doing like quizzes and Kahoots and stuff like that. Even though they're like technically more fun than studying or whatever, they are actually like really helpful in just solidifying your information. And close to an exam, when you don't want to feel too stressed by like reading the textbook or something like that, doing a fun Kahoot with your friends could just help put that aside and then just feel good in preparation for the exam.
Nice, I agree.
So the next question is, how do you find motivation to revise? I think like revision is sort of about more discipline than motivation, but you do need to have some motivation. So how do you guys deal with that problem?
Aisha, do you want to go ahead first?
I was thinking about it as well. Motivation. I think a lot of it comes from like how well you want to do in that subject. I know that sounds very cheesy, but like say you set a goal for yourself, I want to get like a 7 in maths or something. If you're motivated enough to do that, then that will probably like make you want to study. And another thing is, like I mentioned before, like having a checklist of things you want to do. I think when you write that out and like you put it on your desk or on your phone or something, it gives you the motivation because you want to check those things off, and by the end of the day like have a fully checked off list. So I don't know, I find that quite helpful.
One thing I do is it destroys my phone's battery, but I record time lapses of me studying, and so then it feels like I'm revising in like a film, you know, so I can't stop or else I'll break character, and it tricks me into actually revising.
Very interesting. I've never heard
that before. It's like you get to romanticize your life, so that's great.
And I think what can really help us stay like disciplined is, especially in school with free periods, is just seeing other people around us studying. It kind of convinces you to do it. So even if you're not necessarily motivated on a particular day, I think part of the studying process is just sticking through it and trying your hardest to be productive that day.
I agree. Yeah.
And so just to finish up, do you guys have any like final revision tips that you'd like to give or anything you'd like to mention before we end?
There's this thing called the Pomodoro method to revise that I really like because it kind of goes hand in hand with breaking up your revision into manageable sections. Like it's a thing where you revise focus for 25 minutes and then take a break, and then you could slowly up the time or slowly decrease it if it gets late. So I really recommend that.
And I think the breaks is a good one, and also just rewarding yourself. Like, oh, if I do 45 minutes of studying, then I get to watch an episode of this show, or I get to do this thing with my friend. Like, just having like a reward in mind can really help you stay on track, I think.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, everyone works differently, and so, like, a study method that works for someone might not work for you. So, like, just test it out and see what works for you the best, and then stick with it.
Yeah, I think especially with like class tests and stuff, that's your opportunity to understand how you revise best and then just try and carry that through for the final exams and all of that. All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Julia and Aisha, for coming onto this podcast. You were such great hosts.
Thank you guys for listening.
See you next time.